Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is Searching for Jesus, Astral Club. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of this channel, you can do so by supporting us on Patreon. When you join, you get advanced episodes on Sunday, a library of downloaded episodes for your podcast app, and a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth. And there's a chat room, a direct message, which is always easy to reply to just between me and you. It's a lot of great things. If you're interested, you can find the link in the description. Next up, private lessons. If you'd like a lesson to learn how to astral project, be glad to work with you. I've worked with people now all over the world. I'm going to be doing one in Korea soon for somebody in Korea. So I'll be up in the wee hours of the morning so that they can do it in a sane hour. But at any rate, if you're interested, just go to the description and look for the email and just ask me for more information. This episode is years in the making from a certain sense. I have had probably at this point in time hundreds of people over the years asking me if I could go into the past and somehow hook up with Yeshua bar Joseph of Nazareth, known to the Greeks as Jesus, and from now on known by me as Jesus, because I'm not going to be saying Yeshua bar Joseph of Nazareth the whole time. It'll take up most of this episode. I've avoided doing so for a number of reasons, and I'm going to discuss those with you, and I'm going to discuss what's been going on, my process, and hopefully you'll get a better understanding and a better appreciation for what all is involved in this situation. I've had 3 people just recently ask me to check out Jesus. Michael /25, a Truth Seeker Talks, and Alex and R. Pajic. I don't know. It looks like a Slavic type name, and I know there's different pronunciation there. And I have a hard enough time with Latin and Romance languages when it comes to pronunciation. So please forgive me if I did that wrong. So just recently, it's like the heavens themselves are raining these things down on my head, almost forcing me to do something about it, much against my own will. But let me just explain to you my process here and why I've avoided it to this point and why I am now going forward despite my misgivings. First up is difficulty. Going to a year in the past is not that difficult for an experienced projector, especially one experienced in time travel. I've done it quite a lot. Of course, I can never be exactly certain what time I've got to, because if you go back far enough, there's not a lot of ways that you can tell. They didn't keep calendars according to our system many thousands of years ago. And Jesus, despite the fact that he's extremely famous today, is still very elusive in the Bible. Yes, there are many stories that are told throughout Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, each one of them from a different viewpoint. Some mention some miracles and experiences, others don't. So does that mean they weren't there? Does that mean they didn't think that was that important? Who knows? But they didn't write it like a journal. There's no, it's this year in the rule of Augustus in the Jewish month of whatever. That would be extremely helpful if they did that, because then I could know, okay, that's when he met the woman at the well, or that's when he stopped this woman from being stoned to death. No. Most of the time, he's wandering about through the deserted lands, the desert, and from time to time, he'll go into some small town somewhere. Sometimes they'll mention the town, sometimes they won't bother. And as I said, there's always differences between Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And let's also keep in mind that the people who wrote the Bible never met Jesus. Yes, they carry the names of the various disciples and what have you, but they didn't do the writing. These stories came down to them. This stuff didn't even start getting written down to probably somewhere around 100 or more years after Jesus died. So you're getting essentially the beginnings of one heck of a game of telephone. You ever played that game? It's you have like, say you have 20 people in a party and they all get in a line, and somebody comes up with a saying like, for instance, pass the butter and knife. And then each person whispers it into the ear of the person next to them. And by the time they get to the 20th person, somebody says, make the most of life. You see? And that's just 20 people in a row. So you've got these stories coming down second, third, whatever hand. And so that just makes it even more difficult because in order to find the man known as Jesus, I have to pinpoint him in a place and time. And even then, it's not easy because I don't consider myself an expert in biblical geography. I gave myself a thumbnail sketch in Rome, the Roman province of Judea. I looked at some maps that I was able to come up with and some source materials and online so that I could hopefully orient myself a little bit. But I'm not fooling myself into thinking that I'm some biblical archaeologist that knows the ancient world like the back of my hand. I do not. So I tried to think of the easiest way to make this happen. And what I came up with is go to Jerusalem right before the festival of Passover. And according to the experts, they think, keep in mind, nobody knows for sure, but they think that Jesus entered into Jerusalem somewhere between AD 30 and AD 33. So we've got a few years there to play with to hopefully get it right. And finding the city of Jerusalem is going to be a lot easier than flying over the desert somewhere looking for a wanderer with a party of other wanderers looking like herdsmen poorly dressed. I mean, that's a fool's errand. At least that way, I've got a whole city to shoot for. And I've got a basic time period. I'd love something a little bit more specific than that, but I think that's the best I'm going to get. Apparently, Jesus' family from Nazareth made quite the custom. They're like like people today who used to go to Disney World every year. Although I don't know how you can afford it nowadays. It's freaking expensive as hell. But they would always go to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And as a matter of fact, one of the few stories that we get about Jesus as a child is when he was about age 12. And they went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And he got lost like some kid in a mall. I remember my brother got lost in a mall. He ended up coming back to us with a bowl of a goldfish that some stranger bought him a goldfish. Now, that was back in the innocent days when we were like, well, how nice that that stranger did that. Today, we'd probably have some more questions. But that was a much more innocent time. So this custom is helpful, and it helps to explain why Jesus was there somewhere between the AD 30 and 33, because he was used to celebrating the Passover in the biggest city from a Jew's standpoint in the Roman province of Judea, Jerusalem. So that's probably the best shot. Now, I also thought about Nazareth. Now, Nazareth was literally a one donkey town back in those days. I did a little research, and they think there was anywhere from 200 to 400, although some say 600 residents. You see how certain all this is, which is a pretty darn small, I shouldn't even call it a town. I should call it, what, a village? A hamlet? But then again, I don't think the people asking me to find Jesus are wanting me to find him as a kid. I don't think so. because I don't think it has the same impact. It might be interesting to some, but I don't think that's what these folks and other folks have been asking for. So I got rid of that. So anyway, I lucked upon Jerusalem as my target because it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to find. And I've got a basic date range, so I'll have to experiment with that process. Because keep in mind, going to a time or going to a place that I'm not familiar with, that's the key here, is relatively easy. I said relatively. But trying to do both is a lot more difficult because I have to concentrate on not only a place or a time, but on both. And I've had mixed results, to say the least, in the past. But I think that's probably my best chance. The next issue that I have is religious topics. I have gone out of my way as much as is possible to avoid religious and political topics on this channel. There are plenty of channels out there that will yak to you all day long about religion and politics. And like everything else in the U.S., we are divided down the middle. And the last thing I'd want to do is to become just another invisible talking head, talking about religious and political topics. For the most part, I've had both of them up to here. And I'm very reluctant to tread into this particular area because you can't separate Jesus from religion. You can't. And you could say all you like, well, Rick's just kind of doing some biblical archaeology kind of thing. Yeah. But the topic of Jesus is an explosive topic, even to this day, in world religions. So by dipping my toe into this particular acid pool, I'm putting myself into territory that I'm not as comfortable with. I'm very comfortable talking about typical astral projections into time and space and multiple dimensions. Yeah, that's fine. This makes me a little nervous. The next one, changing the past and the ethics thereof. Now, typically, I have always believed that it is impossible to change the past, that is fixed and is unchangeable. And one of the reasons is when I go into the future, I gain all kinds of powers, and humans who are alive can see me. I can operate within that world. But when I go back into the past, I am a shade, a ghost, a specter, a shadow. I have no powers. I cannot impact anything going on. I can see, but I can't impact. And until just recently, I've never been able to communicate with a living being. And the first time was that old medicine woman who was able to see and communicate with me. And I was able to give her some instructions that she requested in their battle against these cannibalistic, child-eating giants. But now I have to face a situation that what if this Jesus, what if he has a similar power? Now, if I can communicate with him, does that mean I might change history? Do I have the right to do that? I mean, what if he asks some difficult questions? Do I lie to him? And he said, what if he asks me, so whatever became of my teachings? Do I say to him, it was fine. It was fine. Or do I tell him the truth? Do I tell him that based on his teachings of peace and love, well, they were perverted into the state religion of the Roman Empire, and they marched into the medieval world in the Dark Ages, using war, mayhem, murder, torture, the Spanish Inquisition, burning of witches in Europe, and all of this was done. Millions were killed horribly in his name. And part of me is afraid. if I told him all of that, would he say, well, the heck with this, I'm going to go be a carpenter? I mean, that would change all of well, certainly Western history. I mean, until just recently, the Christian religion was hand in glove with the governments in the West to eliminate that factor would change all of history in the world and most definitely in the West. So I'm afraid of that, but I guess I'm also equally afraid that he wouldn't change, that he would keep on doing what he's doing, even knowing what's going to happen. I mean, sure, Christianity today is mostly fluffy bunny kind of stuff. I mean, certainly there's the far right that has a lot of hate that they spew, but for the most part, Christianity today is just a fluffy bunny kind of religion. I guess the most recent difficulties were north was in Northern Ireland when you had the IRA fighting against the British and the Northern Irish forces, and there's a lot of blood spilled there over religion. But today it's after a few thousand years, it's mostly kind of toothless now. As a matter of fact, it's actually losing a lot of ground in the West. But it took a long time to get there. So you can understand my concern. You know, if I can communicate with him, he's going to ask that question, and what do I tell him? Next up, this is a minor thing, but, you know, they say never meet your heroes. Now, I can't say that Jesus is my hero, but when I was a kid, he had a big impact on my life, and I can tell you every Sunday, I went to Sunday school where we were taught, you know, his teachings and his experience, and then another hour of church afterwards. So to pretend that it's had no effect on me or that his life had no effect on me is completely unrealistic. I was raised in that milieu, so I can't just get away from it. It's always going to be here with me. So what if he just turns out to be a nut? What if he's a wild-eyed nut? And that's what I find. What if he's just some hippie stoned on whatever they smoked back in those days? That would definitely be one heck of a realization. Now, I don't necessarily, that's not really a major reason, but I just thought I'd throw that in there. So you see, these are some of my main concerns. But despite all of these, I have decided to bow to the will of the masses here because I've had so many people begging me to do this that I am proceeding to do it, and I have been trying. I've had a number of failures so far, and I think I'm getting closer. And I hate to do this to you, but in my next episode, I hope to have a lot more information for you I'm going to tell you about all my failures, okay? Because I want to make sure everybody understands that this is not easy, okay? That I'm going to devote quite a lot of projections to this process. And it's going to put me all over the place, all over time, and I'm going to have lots of failures, most likely, because I've already had a number, until I luck upon the right time and place to be able to interact with his time and space. So next Saturday, I hope to have some success story along with the not so successful stories to tell you. At any rate, I am going to do this, and I'm going to tell you truthfully what I discover, if anything. If it's nothing but a failure, well, at least then I tried, right? Okay, guys. If you like that, please hit the like button. I'd appreciate it. Share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. And questions and comments, please put them down. If you've got any suggestions for me, you can write those down too. If you've got a better time and place that you think I should try to find them than Jerusalem between 30 and 33 AD, right before the festival of Passover, let me know. Because I would need all the information that I can get. But other than that, This is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.